Batong from iAfrican Editor-in-Chief at the Deep Learning Indaba, the Indaba in Kigali. It's going beautifully. We're in the exhibition hall. All the private companies, all our sponsors, all the beautiful people that do a lot of beautiful work on the continent in regards to AI, robotics, and machine learning. But right now I have a very special guest, Professor Max Welling from University of Amsterdam. And he was giving one of the very key keynotes earlier on. Was it yesterday? Yes, it was yesterday. And I want to pick Prof's brain on a couple of things he talked about. And hopefully you at home, engage with us in the comment section. Let us know what you think and ask questions. Let's have a conversation in the comment section. Professor Welling, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Professor Welling, now Brother Welling.
Brother
BT. Max Welling. So let's start with Indaba.
Yes.
Prof, how did you get the invitation? Where were you? How do you know this community?
Well, I've been in Africa before.
Okay.
I've taught in South Africa at Ames. I've been in Kenya actually when there was African data science.
Yes, sir.
And I got invited already in Tunisia, which was last year, by email. And at that point, unfortunately, I was on vacation, so I couldn't do it. And so I promised I'll come next year, and here I am.
Beautiful. Now, Prof, here you're in your hat as an academic, and you've been in that space for a long time. But I want to know, you've had different hats, academia, enterprise, and working in big tech. I want to know, from an academia, professional researcher to enterprise, what are key lessons I think from African researchers should draw in regards to taking advantage of the academic output and actually turning them into businesses?
I think the most important thing is that you get a well-educated student body that graduates from your university. So the quality of the university should be very high, and the graduates that come out should be very highly educated. Because once you build a talent pool, you can also build a local ecosystem of some of them will want to stay in academia, some of them will want to join companies, and of course if there's a lot of talent, the companies will come and they will scoop up the talent and employ them. And some of them, maybe after they've spent some time at a big company and learned a lot of things, want to start startups. And it's kind of this ecosystem where people change jobs every 3 to 5 years and take the learnings from their previous job into a new job. Is when that becomes a vibrant community, I think you'll have an ecosystem that functions well. Of course, there's certain aspects of that which need to be developed, including funding. So where do you get funding? But all these things will come as soon as the sort of ecosystem is starting to grow.
Prof, let's go a little bit deeper into this ecosystem you talk about. Now, you co-founded a company many moons ago called Scyfer BV, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, it was an offshoot from a university lab or collaboration. Yes. Walk me through that journey. What happened? What were you working on university? How did Scyfer BV come about? And what was the work that you were doing there?
It's actually an interesting story. Scyfer's sort of a birth story. I was asked by a big bank to arbitrage a particular competition that they had designed. So they wanted to put ads on on their webpage, and they had invited some of the very big consultancy companies to provide a solution to them. And they asked me to arbitrage, to basically say, is this a fair competition and who has won? And I decided to implement, to ask one of my master students, Taco Cohen, to implement a benchmark. To just make sure, this is a reasonable solution. Everybody else should be way above it. And so at the time, when everybody presented their solutions, including the very big labs with huge resources, this was one master student with one laptop who just learned about deep learning and put a GPU on his laptop. And so when you then looked at the actual curves, the curve that this master student showed was way better than all the big consultancy companies.
Wow.
And then the bank said, well, you get the job because you won the
Okay.
competition. It was very interesting.
Okay.
And so basically, we had a customer before we had a company.
Okay.
And so then we scrambled to create a company.
To package this whole
Yeah,
solution.
to package it. And then we started hiring people and grew the founding team and grew the the employees. We grew to, I don't know, maybe 30 people or something in 4 years. We did lots of small little consultancy projects everywhere about applying AI and data science in a company. And in after 4 years, we got scooped up by Qualcomm.
Qualcomm, 100%. Now, the conversation with Qualcomm, how was that? How did that conversation go? Why was Qualcomm interested in you guys? Qualcomm is a huge
Yeah.
company.
Yes.
They do computer chips, semiconductors. How did that conversation go about?
So Qualcomm was already on the University of Amsterdam campus
Okay.
because they had acquired a previous startup.
Okay.
And they had built a sort of a small lab for research, like an academic lab. They were supporting academic research.
So they were already strong on actual campus. Their presence was quite strong.
No, they weren't strong, but they knew about the campus and
Okay.
they knew me, and they wanted to actually start their sort of research lab in machine learning at the campus of the University of Amsterdam. What their precise reasons for that were, you can guess at, but you could argue that the salaries at that point were lower than in the United States, where the talent pool was just as good as in the United States. And so they decided to buy the company and acqui-hire everybody into the company, including me. And so I did a 4-year stretch of leading the particular lab in Amsterdam
Okay.
and growing that. And it's not actually very successful. They told me that this is one of the most successful acquisitions they did because the team got so well integrated into Qualcomm. And it's still there, and many of the people that were originally acquired are still very happy to be working there. I left after 4 years, but it's not because I was unhappy, but because I wanted to move on to something else.
Now, in that transition, I mean, you went from co-founder at a startup, Scyfer BV with the university background. Now you get integrated into Qualcomm. You're vice president. I mean, how does that leadership role now? I mean, what's going through your head? How are you navigating these new responsibilities? That culture at Qualcomm. Walk me through that journey.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Of course, I hadn't had a lot of experience in working for big companies. I was always an academic, and it's quite a different attitude. But I definitely wanted to learn about it. To Qualcomm's credit, they embedded me very well in the organization. So I directly reported to an SVP, and I often talked to the CTO as well. And so basically, I helped create small research groups where we could see an opportunity to apply AI to some of the problems that Qualcomm developed, like chip design, wireless communication. And there's a whole bunch of these topics where they were interested in, and I would help them find how AI could help improve those areas. By the way, I think this story might be an extra interesting story also to think about in Africa, because
100%.
because
That was my next question,
yeah,
actually.
all right, okay,
yeah.
good. So
No, go into it, yeah.
so I think what's interesting about this is that one of the reasons Qualcomm came to Amsterdam is because they saw there was a lot of talent, well-educated people, and the salaries were still lower, and the competition between that talent there wasn't a lot of other companies still. And so that creates an opportunity for big companies to step in, because at some point Google also came to Amsterdam, and Meta has an office in Amsterdam. And that sort of grows the ecosystem. And then at some point, also the investors will come, because they see now
There's an activity.
talent, there's activity, so they will come in
100%.
too. So it's something that takes time. But I would think if you start with good talent, and you start by maybe getting large companies to sort of employ people on site, because maybe the salaries aren't so high, then slowly you will start to build an ecosystem. And then I think the startups will come, and then the investment will come as well.
100%.
Yeah, so that's kind of a set of steps you have to go through.
100%.
You have to be quite patient to do it, but it's good to start. And there's huge opportunities and chances here in Africa.
More
I think.
definitely.
Yeah.
Looking at, one thing about, the African continent and, where we are in the whole AI global ecosystem is that our infrastructure is not as,
Yeah.
Your University of Amsterdam had the lab. Qualcomm already had acquired some other few companies on campus. They were already physically present there. The infrastructure was there. How how do we navigate some of these? In your research, and you have a lot of colleagues from different parts of the world. When you sit and discuss and look at the African context, uh, how do we navigate that infrastructure access funding problems?
So I'm by no stretch of an imagination an expert in Africa. I just want to say that. But I think you could ask of governments to play a role in, for instance, the compute infrastructure and the data infrastructure.
Okay.
So I think it's harder for instance, governments to just fund companies because there's competition that you want to have between companies, but you can create the right sort of facilities around these companies. So this could be office spaces, but probably more importantly these days is access to GPUs. Although that you can also do through one of the big cloud providers. I think Microsoft and Google and Amazon, AWS, they're probably quite willing to invest around here and help you build up that muscle in some sense. But then there's this other thing which is sometimes forgotten, but what's the true mode is data. And so I think data is becoming increasingly valuable. And you could think very hard about how you can work with governments to create data, curate data centrally, make it available to startups, and make sure it's not abused or used for the wrong things like privacy invasion and stuff like that. I think government could play a big role. I'm not sure if how the different African countries can work together, but certainly Indaba here, the Deep Learning Indaba is an organization which could sort of help form an umbrella over many
100%.
countries.
Talking about the Indaba, I mean, you've interacted with some of the researchers, the tutorial workshops, there's keynote addresses. There's, we're going to have poster sessions later on in the week. I want to get your honest opinion on the talent that you're seeing at the Indaba. How mature is the talent? Is it comparable to, overseas talent? Where are we on that measurement scale?
Right. So without a doubt, the abilities and the talent is very high here, and so you could but maybe there could be more maturity in the way they sort of think about how to start a startup, for instance.
Okay,
right?
let's go
Because
deeper.
they don't have maybe the examples that people in Silicon Valley or in some of these Europe sort of industry hubs have, where you can for instance, one very important thing you need is people of other skill sets. For instance, let's say the business savvy people and the sales people
Complement what's being generated.
to put them together,
Got
right?
you.
And so I think in when you're embedded in one of these startup environments, this is provided, some sense, it's available to you, and people learn you how to start a startup. They tell you how to do it, basically, take you through the steps. I think something like that, I think many people here are not exposed to. And of course, and I think Europe have this problem already also for a while. You create a lot of small startups that never really grow into something very large. And so this problem of, there's many very smart people that can start many startups, but then how do you make sure they get enough funding
To grow.
to grow
To
and
scale
become
and
big
grow.
new companies into the future?
100%.
Yeah, so I think that could still be improved in a way. More exposure to, examples of successful startups or successful, let's say, the big tech companies and working in big tech companies or professors or something like this. So I would say that this talent here is like sponges. It's like they're incredibly eager to learn. I would say much more so even than what I'm used to in Europe. So, and that's an absolutely beautiful, I would say, personality trait that I see here. People really want to climb the ladder and learn how to do it. So I think there's a huge opportunity here.
I'm going to pick your brain, but I'm going to ask it in a different way. If you were going to start an AI company in Africa,
Yeah.
what problem would you focus on and why? I'm asking that because I want to get into your brain and understand your time on the continent. What observations have you made? What gaps and what areas do you feel like, okay, there's something here that's important? There's an opportunity here, there's a vacuum there.
Right. So I think what African startups and researchers are naturally very good at is to identify problems that are very native to Africa. For instance, agriculture or something like that, or wildlife maintenance or something like this, right? And so I think that's absolutely fantastic to go into as a starting point. I would personally maybe do something like self-driving greenhouses or automated agriculture or something like that, so that you apply all the tools of AI to automate food production, or maybe something like absorption of water from the air instead of, and in areas where there is a lot of drought. So these are all technologies that could be developed here, or possibly something like, I would say, sort of getting energy from the sun. So there's many places where there's a lot of sun. So building solar parks, maybe in the desert, where maybe if you put the solar panels on stilts, the area below it, you can grow, food or other things or grass, and you can have cattle underneath it or something like this. You could maybe play a role in carbon dioxide removal from the atmosphere because you have all the sun, and you can remove it everywhere. So there's lots of beautiful opportunities, to apply the latest technology to local problems. I do also want to say that if you would just do that, you're not doing justice to yourself. So I think you also should go beyond it and create the talent and education in order to build your own Gen AI labs, to build your own Open AIs, your own Googles here, right? And do fundamental research, not just only applied stuff, which is incredibly important and good for startups, but also aim high and say, we want to be the next continent where the next generation of AI is going to be invented. Everywhere around the world, the population is aging, except in Africa. So if you wait long enough, all the youth is in Africa, right? And if you educate all that youth, you have massive opportunities. Everybody will be looking to Africa for talent. And that's something you can start now. You can basically say, let's make sure we now educate the younger generation to be the best in the world, and then they will automatically do fundamental research, start companies and stuff like that.
Prof, I noticed something. I noticed both with yourself and Professor Verena. Professor Verena also had an offshoot AI company called Alana, and it started from a university lab. Scyfer BV also started from a university lab. Now, a lot of academic administrators are going to be looking at this, universities, vice chancellors, deans, faculty deans. Can you just maybe explain that model of the university and labs, and how does that model work? Where you have the university, it houses a lab, and the lab comes up with a solution, then it becomes a private company. Can you just explain that? How does that architecture look like?
So the big mistake that many universities in the Netherlands made is that the universities wanted like 50% of the company. And it should be more like 5%, even if the innovation was done at the university. Because if you take such a large share of the company, it will become unfundable.
100%.
So there will be no venture capitalist which will say, let me buy a piece of that company if a university, which is basically dead weight, is not doing anything for that company, owns half of the company. So universities need to really think very hard about 5% of a successful company is a lot more than 50% of a dead company, right? And so, but people have figured this out. So they should look at how do people do it in the US? How does Stanford do it? Nowadays, University of Amsterdam is actually also very good at it. They've learned their lesson, so they take 5%, and that works really well. But even for that 5%, they should deliver something. They should give you something, not just the innovation, but maybe they help you on the legal side or on the financial side or something, like give you a little bit of
access to data sets or whatever the case may be.
Access to data sets or something like that. So the university is there to support you, and the university needs to see that successful startups that spin out of a university is their success, however big the shares that they have. It is their success. It is their task to create lots of startups because that will help the economy in a country. And I think as a university, one of your objectives should be to help the economy of your country. And so I think it should be written, now it's actually in the Netherlands that the university have an explicit goal that says valorization, which is bring science to the community. That could be many things, but it could also be startups and spin-offs that would grow into big companies, which would create tax dollars, which are good for the and jobs, which is good for the country. So I think universities need to change their attitude. Governments need to I would say, want to support it using infrastructure, as we discussed. And then I think it could go very well. For instance, universities also provide office spaces.
Yes. Co-working spaces.
Co-working spaces,
Yes, wow.
and all these things. So anyway, I think, once that's in place, the universities become an important part of that ecosystem. They help the startups, and then things start to grow.
Prof, this discussion I think was very beautiful for us to draw insights, to get a sense of how do our global colleagues go about innovating in AI. And I think for a lot of our viewers watching this, whether it's researchers, whether it's university administrators on the continent of Africa, I think it's important just to understand that, universities are microcosms of societies and they're so powerful. And in most towns, cities, countries, the most mature form of institutions are universities. And the reason why we have you here is to draw insights because you went through the journey. Academia, lab, enterprise. And it's important for us to draw on those insights and see how do we replicate that with our special local, flavor, dynamics, diversity. And your story is very valid. And thank you for having us. Thank you for being here. And looking forward to seeing you at more Indabas.
Thank you very much for the interview. It was a lot of
Officially the
fun.
coolest professor, Brother Max.
Brother BT.